Welcome, everybody. If you have headed in this direction, you are once again in violation of jaywalking. That's right, you've arrived to Jubilee Street, a music podcast. If you're here for some Nick Cave action, well, you're in luck because, baby, there is a war coming. Ian McCurtis is my co-host. I am Jake Curtis. Ian, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. There's a war coming. I'm fired up. Maybe that's not an appropriate thing to say right now.
Well, that does bring me to my
context
first...
of the song.
That brings me to my first question, which is...
Well, let's finish the intro.
Okay, all right, let's do the... Okay, finishing the intro. What did I miss? I introduced us? Okay, I introduced us. I'm Jake, you're Ian. I told him the name of the podcast. We're... Oh, yeah. I got to tell him the song we're talking about. So, from, as we like to say, a seminal Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds album, we're talking about a song called Hiding All Away from Abbotsford Blues.
I was hiding all the way. You went to the museum and you climbed the spiral stairs. You searched for me all among the knowledge of the air. I was a hidden babe. I was a hiding all the way. I was a hidden.
That's the episode. We'll see you next week.
Real quick. Yeah, bye. I want to shout out the best show on TV right now, Euphoria. Just had their season finale last night. Our boy Nick Cave featured prominently in it. There's a scene where Rue is in, you don't know his character, Elliot's bedroom. He's played by a guy who's like, he's either in Brockhampton or like friends with all them. Anyway, right behind Rue, there's a Nick Cave From Her to Eternity poster, like the whole scene.
That's really cool.
So, shout out Zendaya, shout out Nick
Hey,
Cave.
sorry, someone's knocking on my door. Who is it?
Warren Ellis?
No.
Warren Ellis.
No. Hey, Kyle, it's me. It's me, John Lennon. Just wanted to say boo. Boo on Euphoria. They need to put a Beatles poster or a plastic Yoko Ono band poster in their room.
That's what the world needs is more Beatles posters. There's not enough of
More
those.
Beatles. That's why I came back from the grave to tell you that. Euphoria, boo. Boo on you.
We got to get the word out about John Lennon's work because people don't know about it.
Blue, can you get John Lennon out of here, please? Hey, I'm not quite done. I just want to talk more about how much I contributed to the Beatles. Paul didn't do everything. Anywho, I'm glad you're liking Euphoria. Shout out Euphoria for having a Nick Cave poster in the background. I haven't seen the new season. It seems like it's very dramatic and emotional and just what the doctor ordered for everyone.
It's the Sopranos of high school drama.
I wouldn't go that far. Would not go that far. I think we all know what the Sopranos of high school dramas is. Not Euphoria.
What?
I don't know. I'm asking you. What do you think it is?
Euphoria.
No, but that's not it. Like, what's the other option?
I don't know if there is one. What's Freaks and Geeks is probably the second best.
Yeah, it's not like The Sopranos, though. Yeah, maybe Euphoria is like that, because you got Fezco, and you got all the drugs, and there's probably people getting killed in the second season. Dominic Fike's in it. So, yeah.
That's the guy I was talking about.
Yeah, Dominic Fike. I don't think he's in Brockhampton. Maybe he features with Brockhampton.
Then he's just friends with all them. I wasn't sure. Brockhampton has like 10 people. I wasn't sure if he was in it or not. I know he's friends with Kevin Abstract and the crew.
I promise I'll wrap up this banter here, but do you know that Dominic Fike is dating Hunter Schafer, who plays Jules?
Jules.
Yeah.
Love Jules.
And one of Haley's close friends looks exactly like Jules to me. Like similar, like face structure and everything.
Well, they could be make a career as a Hunter Schafer
lookalike. Yeah,
impersonator.
They can work with that guy from Community, and maybe they'll end up working one of Abed's lookalike events.
All right, let's just talk about the song. 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
This is what they come here for, though. Okay, so Hiding All Away.
I have one question before you start. Can we start with this?
Let's keep going. Yeah.
This is related to the song. Everybody who stuck around through that labored intro, thank you.
It was Euphoria Corner. We had to do it.
Euphoria Corner. I can't think of a shortened name for that because then it sounds like I'm saying like euthanize corner, youth corner. Anyway, what made you pick this song? Because I don't think that you always go. We don't use like random generators anymore like we were doing in the beginning. So, was there anything that made you choose this? Because there's a pretty standout line that just gets repeated at the end of the song when it kind of explodes into probably one of the best Bad Seeds freakouts that like made me think at first I was listening to a song on Grinder Man. What was there any rhyme or reason that you chose this?
That is kind of eerie that you say that, maybe subconsciously, but not intentionally. I just picked it because it was, probably my favorite song on the album other than No Children, and we were kind of saving that one because it's a big one. So, yeah, just one of my favorites.
Well, it's not one of my favorite Bad Seed songs. This is a great song. And
one of my favorites on the album. I don't know if I'd say it's one of my favorite Bad Seed songs.
It's definitely one that I'd like to see live. I feel like that freak out at the end is like, it really does it for me. Because the Bad Seeds, really up until like this record, and I'm not saying they weren't in there throughout their discography, but they're poised. They're like thoughtful. There's a lot of like understated musicianship and lyricism, and it's not often that they kind of have these moments where they let loose. And sort of in the song Breathless, I think this song has a similar kind of rock and roll, like tongue-in-cheek quality to it. But like I would even say it reminded me of Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones in its energy. Yeah. So I like this song a lot. I didn't expect it to be what it was.
Accurate. I don't know if Nick Cave is a huge Rolling Stones fan. I don't know him to be. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But I do know that his influences are probably the same as the Rolling Stones' influences. All the old blues dudes and whatnot.
Yeah, knowing Nick Cave, he'd probably be like, not a Rolling Stones fan, but probably listens to all the bands that influenced the Rolling Stones. But yeah, it had that like we've talked about with this record before. There's a lot of like soul, R&B, gospel influence on some of these songs, and it definitely had that kind of like rapturous come to God moment that I think that they're always kind of going for on all their songs. But with the choir and the I don't know. It's just it's like we always say with this particular era of records. It's like, Nick got his like printout priest collar and he's just up there preaching for whatever the duration of this album is, hour and 20 minutes, something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just really fun to watch it unfold. Like it feels a lot like there's sort of this like old script, and it kind of feels like you're opening this like old dusty book, and you hear somebody kind of clear their throat, and then the song just kind of kicks in, and he's like, I just imagine him wearing like robes, and he's got like he just looks like a priest, and he's just kind of like shouting at people like about the devil and the Lord and war's coming and there's an apocalypse and what are you gonna do about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is the 2000s is kind of the decade where I feel like Nick Cave, his projects, it was just sort of like, let's play some rock and roll, which leads you to Blix Leavin' when he's like, I didn't start playing rock and roll to be in a rock and roll band.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, because this is the most like, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is that's a great quote that we bring up a lot on the podcast from Blixa. It feels different. It feels like it definitely is a different Bad Seeds for sure.
The other cool duality I think is that I think of Nick Cave as like a punk icon. I think a lot of people do. If you never heard him before, this sort of stuff would be the closest to what a punk fan is probably used to.
Yeah.
But I think, like, philosophically, this is, like, the least punk Nick Cave stuff. This is, like, more indebted to, like, James Brown than it is to Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like all the other stuff that's a little weirder, that doesn't sound as quote unquote punk, is like philosophically very punk. It's very abrasive or challenging. I mean, this is just, you know, you could show this to anyone and they'll probably like it.
Yeah, accessible is a word that I
Accessible.
heard pop up in my head a lot listening to this. It just felt very. It was something that I'd be like, oh, you know, you want to get into the Bad Seeds, check out these tracks from Abattoir Blues, and if you like that, you know, here's some stuff from Skeleton Tree, and then I'd kind of, you know, sprinkle in stuff from each area, you know, maybe a little bit of Murder Ballads, a little bit of Tender Prey, a little bit of, you know, maybe throw Tupelo in there, like stuff like that.
So what did you take away from this song? There's a lot to chew on. Did you have any sort of big theme you were thinking?
Well, the ending line that's just repeated and kind of grows and grows and grows was the one that I kind of hear, because those last moments of the song are, I believe, its best. But theme-wise, I'm still kind of trying to piece it together. What do you think he's talking about here?
I think it's a little bit of like a modge podge of different ideas. Like, I don't know if that end, there's a war coming kind of part, I don't know how much that matters to the rest of the song, or if it just matters like musically, is like an ending.
Mm-hmm.
But I take it hiding all away, just the song, I think on its whole, is about telling people like us, like the Jubilee Street podcast, to stop trying to dissect his work and find meaning in everything. Like, he hides bits and pieces of himself in different things. A lot of it is hidden. Like, you're not going to figure it out. I think it's like, I'm not laying my cards out on the table. Like, I'm showing you, I'm making this art, I'm pouring my heart out, but I'm not going to like explain it. I'm hiding pieces of myself in it, and that's that. Don't ask me any questions.
Well, it makes me think a lot about my I feel like I've kind of been in these like waves of creativity the last 2 years, you know. I finished that book draft last year, and then I started like a second one, kind of scrapped that, and then I started working on a script. Finished that script last weekend. Now I've been in kind of this, and even then I was kind of working on it here and there. You know, ideally I'd like to be working on my like my creativity every day, but I think I always feel like I need to have this like grander purpose. And I feel like when I was like 20 is like always the feeling I'm going for. Is I genuinely used to like look forward to like coming home after work at PetSmart and like I'd get like a 6-pack of tall PBRs, and I had like this swirly green and yellow bong that I bought from some smoke shop that I bought with like Tyler and maybe Chad one day, and it was nicknamed the Vase because it looked like a vase. And I would like get stoned and I would just write. And you know, Mateo would let me borrow his typewriter, which was an even more romantic thing. And you know, I would write up into the early morning, you know, because we would be partying till midnight, and it was like a romantic thing, you know. And I was super into Bukowski and that kind of shit at the time. So it did make me think like it's easier to just kind of let go than it is to like dive deeper, because sometimes you're spending more time trying to find something out that might come to you more naturally. It's a lot like, you know, yeah. So I see what you're saying. For sure.
I think of the lines, where he's talking about the poets, and then the verse after that he's talking about his imitators. And it makes me think of a quote from Murakami I really like, that's, if you only read the same books everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. And
yeah, it's a great quote.
I think Nick Cave is like, you know, saying I pull influences from everywhere. Like I think he's just saying I'm not so easy to figure out.
Yeah. This is probably going to be pretty on the nose, but Did you go to church at all as a kid? I know
Rarely, but I mean, I have been.
So I know that your upbringing was pretty similarly like secular. Mine was
Yeah.
probably more than yours, just because I went to a Catholic school for elementary school, and my dad was Baptist and would pretty actively. He would sometimes have grace at the table. It was mostly only on holidays, and I think it was like a weird tradition thing for him. But anywho, this song feels a lot like when you're in church and the priest, they always have like a story that they tell. Like I never went to church with my family ever. Like I think maybe we went to a Christmas mass like one time together, but I only ever went to any sort of church or mass service like by myself, without my family. Mm-hmm. And I went with my friend Kevin's family when I was a kid, and I only went because there were free donuts. So
the concessions or whatever after the sermon, yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't really fucking understand what it was. So we'd get there, and his mom would be like, all right, you got to sit down. We're going to sit down and listen to the priest. And, then we'd all go run around. It was a really cool, like when you're a kid, churches are really weird and kind of creepy and mysterious because there's all these rooms and, it just seems like there's all these places inside of this building that doesn't seem like it should have it. It's interesting. But I promise this rant has a purpose, so I'll finish. I would be sitting in the chair, and the priest would be like, all right, we're going to talk about kindness today. We're going to talk about truth. We're going to talk about compassion. And I get kind of a sense here that this is like an anti-song meaning, anti-lyrical meaning. Like I feel like he's purposefully playing with that narrative to, hiding all away. It's ironic in that these people who are coming for meaning to a church are also hiding all of these secrets. And then when you go looking for answers, you like the idea of looking for the answers, but once you get it, it's not ever as good as what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's probably some of that there. I saw it was either an interview Nick or Warren gave where they said that the choir that sings on this song and on a lot of the album is a Christian choir, and they were kind of singing blindly. Like, I guess, they probably made up sheet music and gave it to them, and they were kind of just running through it without practicing, so they didn't know what a lot of the words were. And they'd finish the song and be like, what the fuck are we singing about? And I think Nick Cave liked the, I'm going to get a Christian choir to sing these songs that are, this song isn't the most profane or anything, but it's certainly a little weird for a Christian choir to be singing.
Go ahead, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Just real quick before we get too far away from the church thing, because me and you have never really talked about that as being a kid, but I would go to church probably once a year, and I sort of had a similar experience to you. I went to, it was the Disciples of Christ Church in J-Town, and the pastor was named Doug something, I can't remember. But I remember always being like, whenever I'd go, I'd be fascinated by how he would construct the sermon. Like, it would be like what you said. He'd be like, today we're going to talk about honesty. And then he would tell a story about something in his life that week, and then weave it into whatever message he was trying to say about religion. But it was always very personal. And I didn't notice it at the time, but I think it was the same part of my brain that likes writing and likes constructing stories. I was always so fascinated by that. I think if I was religious, I would love to be a pastor and love to write those sermons every week and play around with the format. I hadn't thought about that in forever, and you telling that story made me think about that.
Well, I'm sure there's a really good idea in you somewhere. It just seems like a story you would write about a priest who can't write stories anymore, and he's been on a sermon block, and
Well, I'm sure, again, I don't have a lot of experience with church. I think that the church I would go to, I think that pastor was a really good one, because I was never religious, and I was always pretty enthralled by what he was saying. I imagine most pastors, it's probably boring, especially at a Catholic church. I'm sure that's not nearly as interesting.
The Catholic church definitely wasn't, but the music was great because they had it was a private school, so the funding was really good. So the church part of the school was really nice, and like I definitely preferred like the more, I think. So I went to Hikes Point Christian Church, which is right across the street from Myers, where Myers Middle School was. I don't know if it's still there or not. And it was right in my neck of the woods. And my friend Kevin's family was like, everybody was really close to it. So, we'd go there and then go to Mongolian Grill, and then
Oh man.
they'd drop me off at home. And my mom would always be like, you need to offer to pay. You need to give his mom money. And I would always try to give her money, and she'd be like, no, honey, you keep it. Don't worry about it. It's my treat. But they would treat me like all the time. So I think my mom always felt guilty. Or maybe I felt guilty and I just didn't understand it, but they were really great to me.
Man, I don't know if that was like a nationwide or a worldwide thing, or if it was just in Louisville, but I hadn't thought about this in years either. In the late 90s, early 2000s, like a Mongolian Grill style restaurant was like,
it was the shit.
Coolest thing. Like I feel like the whole city was obsessed with it.
I don't know if we ever went with you when we were in Via Animo, but I know for sure I went to Mongolian Grill up into my early 20s, and there was one kind of pocketed away in the J-Town Stony Brook shopping plaza behind the Stony Brook cinemas, and it was awesome. You know how it works. You just pick your protein. So you get a bowl of your protein, your vegetables, whatever noodles you want, and then they cook it for you there, and it was fucking sweet. I had a great time going to those. But anyway, back on track. There would be something about those sermons that really spoke to me, and I remember I told my mom, I'm like, could you get me a Bible? I want to learn about this. And my mom was like, I'm not going to go to church with you. She was very cool about it. She was like, I'm not interested in going, but if you want to go, I'll take you, and I'll drop you off, and then I'll pick you up. So for a little while, I think I did it like twice. I would get dropped off for their youth groups, and the first time I dug it. The second time I was super distracted and I realized I didn't give a shit about the actual scripture, and then I think it was just about the community aspect. And
dude, I never knew that about you. I had the same exact thing happen to me. I was like,
yeah.
I think I want to like read the Bible and like get into this. Like when I was like, I don't know, 10 or something. And it was short-lived because once I kind of like, the cynical part of my brain just, I quickly was just like, this is kind of bullshit. But I had the same thing where I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to like get into religion. And then didn't happen.
Did you know that it was around that time I was briefly in a like church band?
No, I had like a lot of friends. That was like a big thing.
Yeah.
Like a preteen, early teens to be in a church band. What did you play? Guitar?
I played guitar, yeah, and so those were the first times I played music in front of people. It was pretty fun.
What did you play? Some Christian bands.
I don't fucking remember the songs, but it was cool. There was like 3 people there
DC Talk
who sang, and then there was a drummer and a bassist. It was fun. I mean, I think it's just, I don't know why it didn't stick with me, because I genuinely remember having these moments where I was like, oh, this is really interesting, and like you'd pick up some like good life advice. And I think that ultimately at the end of the day, the Bible is basically the same as a Ram Dass book or Eckhart Tolle or like whatever.
No way, dude.
I do believe that, because it's all advice, but it's all. I disagree. I think that there are things in the Bible that are fucked up and not right, but most of it is just like lessons for being a good person. Like, not all of it's like that, but the stuff that you would get in church was sterilized, and if you just saw these particular passages they would draw from, like there's good stuff in there. I think it is very similar. I disagree.
Maybe the New Testament, but like the first 75% of the Bible is just misogynistic.
Well, you gotta keep in mind, this is like this is like a Methodist or like Unitarian church. Like, they weren't fucking talking about any of that bullshit. Like, the people that went there were definitely like those type of people, but the sermons were usually about like I said, being compassionate, being honest, like being a family member, being a community member. Like, it was all just about being like a good person. And I think
believe that there's
ultimately,
churches like that, but I don't think the Bible as a whole is like that.
I don't know if that's what I was arguing necessarily, but I think that, I mean, we have friends that are Christian and they haven't, like, you know, they know that there's shitty things about Christianity and the history of it, and they're still Christian. And I do think that, like, there are Bible verses that are well written and they have good messages. I'm not saying that the Bible itself is a great book or that
you said it was like a Ram Dass book or an Eckhart Tolle book.
Yeah, I would stand by that. They're very similar. They're all, like, as a whole, it's not the same as those because those books aren't like spewing hatred. So there is a big difference, but I'm saying that the message that you get in the positive parts of the Bible are similar. It's just ways to live your life, ways to be present. You know, being a good community member mean like that. All of that aids in somebody's like well-being being heightened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just feel so negatively about all that. I have a hard time seeing the good, but I know it's there.
I mean, it's like that with everything. Like, but I think it in general, the Bible is obviously a work of fiction and it's misconstrued by people who don't want to critically think about it. And I think that's sort of where the problem is. Because if you look at it as if it's just this crazy story that like 12 dudes that were probably on opium wrote after they hallucinated some man. I mean, you know, people believe crazier things.
Did you know that Joshua is, you know, the English version of the name Jesus?
I think I did know that. Yeah.
I didn't know that until the other day. I saw it on, I don't know, fucking Reddit or something. Let's talk. You got anything to say about these poets he mentioned, Sappho and Auden?
I don't know anything about Sappho or Auden other than I know their names.
Well, me neither. Moving on. I don't even know their names.
Yeah, I did want to talk about two passages that I really liked. It says it's verse 4. You asked an electrician if he'd seen me around his place. He touched you with his fingers, sent sparks zapping at your face. I just really like the imagery there. The annotation on Genius said that the electrician fingered this person like as he was being electrocuted, so it like sent electricity through her body, which is funny. The Genius annotation literally says, it appears that the woman was fingered by the electrician. And then the verse after that is, you went ahead and asked your doctor to get some advice. He shot you full of pentadyne, and then he went and billed you twice. That is, to me, where it gets into interesting lyrical territory, because I know that people like get a lot of use out of like therapy and being medicated with like antidepressants and anti-anxiety. Like, those are real things that they work for people. It's not, it's science, and it's but to me, I've always kind of felt like therapy is obviously necessary, but it's also kind of one of those things where it's like, Jesus Christ, can't you just like go on a walk and read a book? It'll be better eventually.
Well, there was commentary there. I think it was more about painkillers than it was about therapy.
Well, again, this is just where my mind went about that. Yeah, are there any verses, lines in particular that you wanted to talk about? There's a lot of good writing on this song, that's for sure.
I like the one about the cops where it's got the jelly. They rub jelly on their sticks, like they're fucking you with their batons.
Yeah, they leered at you with their baby blues and rubbed jelly on their sticks. Yeah.
And it also makes me think of like cops eating donuts, like jelly donuts, a little double meaning there.
Yeah, it definitely, it also could be taken that they're just exposing themselves and masturbating with their power.
True. Very likely of Nick Cave.
I did read the Genius annotation about Sappho and Auden, and it looks like the only thing that the note says is they're revered in intellectual circles. It seems like this person who wrote this annotation is pretty sexist, in my opinion. Let's see what else is there. You walked into the Ball of Fame and approached my imitators. Some were stuffing their faces with caviar. Some were eating cold potatoes. I feel like it should be cold potatoes to rhyme with imitators, Nick.
That's kind of how he says it, eating cold potatoes.
The Genius annotation here says this is likely an allusion to all of the musicians that have taken influence from Cave over the years. Some of them borrowed from Cave and became successes, while others borrowed from Cave and did poorly. It's an interesting way to take those lyrics.
Yeah, he's saying some people. I like, I'm drawn to people with these big egos, the same as Kanye West. So I love him saying, like, I got a lot of people trying to rip me off. Some of them are making a lot of money doing it. Some of them aren't making
Going broke
anything
doing it.
Yeah, but I just love the ego to be like, I got all these people trying to be like me.
There's this air of like sarcasm and irony that's going on where lyrically this song comes off very flippant. That's like the first word that comes to mind is it's very flippant, arrogant, and it's also called Hiding All Away. And it makes me wonder if this is sort of like, I don't know if you've read the story Bartleby the Scrivener by, I think it's Herman Hesse.
Hell no.
It's a really good story.
Never
It's
heard of it.
just about this. I don't remember the particulars because I read it like 10 years ago, but it's about this guy that kind of like stows away and just like writes all the time. And I think a scrivener was someone who like copied. So it's kind of maybe like a copywriter, not a copywriter, but like they would like take information, write it again, like just write it over and over again. And it made me think of that story, but it also made me like imagine like Nick Cave kind of like stowing himself away in like a bunker in his office in his home and kind of just being like, delusions of grandeur while he's writing lyrics for this new record or while he's writing a book or something like that. And, just being his general like productive self. And it was the imagery was really strong of like, oh, you're looking for me. You want to figure me out. Well, I'm going to fucking zig and zag and, you're going to try to look for and smell that knowledgeable air. But as soon as you think you're onto the scent, I'm going to, dip and dodge like out of where you think I'm going. And I think it's like him sort of being playful and that like, you didn't really see this coming, did you? You didn't really see that coming, and then it's kind of like a meta commentary on like all of his discography all at once, I think. And I think that's why like that's why it made me think of Grinder Man is it's like I feel like this song was such a precursor to that sound that would come in later, like years later. And they were probably already working on that. But yeah, it definitely kind of has this like, stowed away artist vibe that's like, you're not going to find me. Don't try looking for me. But it's also like the process of you looking for me is meaningful.
Yeah, and this is that's like imagery that I think he thinks of throughout the years because a few years ago on the Red Hand Files, someone asked him, I believe, like his 10 favorite songs, and he listed them, but he called them hiding songs because he hid a part of himself in those songs. So I think this like, hiding bits and pieces of yourself, almost like a Horcrux. I think that's something that really appeals to him.
And these lyrics are all very, like, at the time this record came out, these were all, this was his thing. This is what he did. He talked about butchers forcibly molesting people. He talked about electricians fingering people and zapping them with electricity. Like, these are all very Nick Cavian ideas and images. And I think that it makes sense that he might put, like, a Cavian Horcrux in this song because it does kind of unlock itself. It does feel like if there were a Marvel movie equivalent to a Nick Cave song, I feel like this is kind of the one.
Yeah, I think all the like sexual imagery, at least the way I take it, is like when you make art, and release it into the world, it's all it's almost like you're just inviting yourself to have sex with people you don't know. It's like I'm letting all these people be really intimate with me, and I don't even know them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that. I mean, that's kind of like a problematic idea, but there is like an element to that to art. Like, I'm going to show you my deepest vulnerabilities, and I don't. There's no other side to the window. I'm not seeing you.
I think one of my insecurities around art is that I feel like I am really good at what I do, but I also don't work hard enough on showing it to people because I'm afraid to. And then I resent the people who do put themselves out there and, get published or win an award or get some kind of recognition because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm just as good as them, if not better. Like, why am I not getting recognized? And, there's probably a little bit of that going on in this song too, or I'm imprinting that meaning onto it.
No, I think it's there. I think that for people who make art, so I think there's like two things to have when you're talking about that. There's the ability to put yourself out there, and there's the ability to fully put yourself into the art you make and like expose yourself, And I think a lot of people can do one of those two things. Not a lot of people can do both. I'm kind of in your boat. I think I'm really good at like really putting all myself into what I do, but I am not good at the part of where I like am really that stoked to show to people, even though I want to be.
Mm-hmm. Man, as I scan over these lyrics, it seems like this female character that shows up kind of gets abused the whole song.
Yeah, I think she's like in this metaphor, she's like Nick Cave, or she's the artist.
Yeah. Just like, oh, you got a problem, here, take this. Oh, you got a problem, here, I'll help you with that. Wink, wink. Oh, you want justice? Well, I'm going to hit you in the face with my gavel. Yeah, this is a cool song. Did you happen to watch any of the live performances on YouTube for this?
Yeah, I watched one when you first search a song that pops up. It's like a really well shot one.
Yeah.
Whatever that one is. That's great. That's one of that tour. We've said it before. That's the tour I would most like to see him on with the choir and all the bells and whistles.
It really is a phenomenal performance, and it's cool seeing Warren Ellis pre-Wizard Beard.
Yeah, this is 2003.
Yeah, and then there's that. There is a live record that this is featured on. It's like a variant color of the Abattoir Blues Lyre of Orpheus album cover. So check that out if you haven't heard that either, listeners. It's always fun to cover a Nick Cave song that has multiple versions because, this is a band that I think thrives in live performances, and this is no different. It's really cool to see this performed live on these videos.
So I think the structure of the song, you can kind of argue whatever way you want to. Like I think you can kind of see it in different ways, but I would argue that the chorus of the song is the down 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 down.
Yeah.
I would call that the chorus, and I'm always fascinated by, Lullaby by The Cure being like one of the most famous ones. I'm always fascinated by songs that have an instrumental chorus.
Interesting.
Imagine that has to be like one of the hardest ways to write a song, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a good enough riff, I feel like it's kind of, if the song works around it, might as well utilize the riff, right?
But I always find that so cool. I don't think I've ever done it before, and
right.
You hardly ever hear a song with an instrumental chorus.
Yeah, I think it's really well done here too. This song is very effective in that way.
What else, Jake Curtis? I think that's about all for me.
I wish I had more to say. This is a really I think that's all I've got. This is a really solid pick.
Oh, well, let's talk about the end, because I guess we didn't really get into that. I mean, musically, like you said, this is one of the most powerful
This is my favorite part of the song.
Album, certainly. As far as heaviness goes, one of the heaviest Nick
Yeah.
Cave gets. So do you think it's just adding to that gospel vibe by speaking of wars, like God and the devil? Or do
Yeah.
you think there is a relation to maybe like he's hiding himself in all these places, almost like a fortress or like a bunker, like keeping himself safe for there's a war?
I'm going to tie it back to what I was talking about with my experience going to church. And I feel like these kinds of, like, the way that they word and, like, write sermons is they use languages like war a lot. And to me, this feels like the end of a sermon where a preacher would be like, there's a war coming, so be prepared for that internal war that you're going to deal with God and the devil. And that's what I really think this is. Like,
And put some money in the collection.
and then make sure to pass the bucket around and put a couple of dollars in there. And so that's what I took from it, is that if we're to take this to be like preacher era Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds, this is just a preacher doing his job, and he's scaring people. He's scaring this like Nick Cave stand-in. There's abuse going on. There's these stories of turmoil and suffering and the justice system failing you and your doctor failing you and just, charging you twice for a service that did you no good. And it's all very like depraved and depressing and sad. And it's like, not only do you have to deal with that, but there's also a war coming. And then contextually speaking, while we're recording this episode, it's been, I think, less than a week since Russia declared war on Ukraine. So for me, the line, that's why I was like, did you pick this song in particular? We mentioned that a little bit earlier, but, it's like this ending could be interpreted many different ways, and it does have a very like kind of like rain, hell, fire down upon you vibe. But I think ultimately it's triumphant, and you come out at the end of this song stronger than you did at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there might be a deeper meaning with the whole hiding himself, but I haven't been able to wrap my brain around what it would be, and I just hear it as adding to the religious feel of the whole album, and this feels like the climax of a sermon for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's
If there was a war coming, what Nick Cave album would you draft to fight? Grinderman?
Wow. I mean, that's the thing, is it's like, if Grinderman were a person or an army, I don't really think that they'd listen to anyone, So if we were hoping for like a Nick Cave album to be an army that we could control somewhat, I would say probably Ghosteen would be the best army, because it's been broken already, so it knows what pain is, and therefore it understands what it's doing, so it can go to war effectively.
That's a good answer. War with empathy. I guess that's all we can ask for.
I think that's all I got, Ian McCurtis. I think that's all I got.
Hiding All Away, Nick Cave, Abattoir Blues. Great song. Highly recommended.
So I think we've got another draft episode coming out later on this month. And then Ian will have to talk about what we want to do next. Are we going to do some more Abattoir Blues songs?
Maybe we will. We said we were going to do those in February, and we only did 2.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do that. I got some other ideas. I'm sure you got some other ideas. We're always cooking on some stuff.
We're always cooking it up in the kitchen. Got that Cajun seasoning. You can like, follow, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Music and Spotify. You can also leave us a review, 5 stars only. Helps us get into the algorithm for music podcasts. And then we have an Instagram at Jubilee Street Pod. We've got a link in our Instagram bio where all of our important and relevant websites and links are. We love to hear from you, so go ahead and email us. You can message me on Instagram all the time. Jake, I'm checking that pretty often. Ian checks the Gmail pretty often. So, yeah, that was Hiding All Away, Abattoir Blues. This has been Jake Curtis. They have been Ian McCurtis. Have a Nick Cave of a week.
Hiding all the way. searched through my poets, from Sappho through to Auden. I saw the book fall from your hands as you slowly died in boredom. I had been there, dear, but I was not there anymore.